We are going to go back in time and relive the highs and lows of a life filled with love and laughter. Are you ready, Judy?
Yes, as ready as I can be. My heart is pumping.
Is it really?
It is, but I just saw my nails and they look really good. Sorry.
Well, here we go, Judy Love. This is Your Life Before Loose.
Oh, my God.
Judy Love.
Well, I don't really care what people say. I don't really watch what them want do. Still, I got to stick to my girl.
So bad gad galley.
I might not play.
What's going on? You can tell I'm Jamaican. We're going to give it to you raw, Jamaican style. Yes, ma'am. No. The idea of a roundabout is to lessen the traffic. What's going round and round, ring of roses, pocket full of posies.
She golden. Usually on the butt of everyone's jokes.
I'm trying to get cancelled out here, OK, Prince?
What a journey.
Oh, my God.
Wonderful. In 30
Love
seconds, what a journey. Look at you, you're crying already, Judy. Is that quite emotional for you just to see that?
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God, we don't want to do this to you. But
You're
I
allowed to cry
understand
today.
why.
It's how far you've come.
That is...
It's there, right
really,
before your eyes.
That is really... It's overwhelming. It's joyous tears. It's just, you know, sometimes... Oh, my God, you know, I look so cute.
Oh, where's this coming from?
You know, it is. When you see it and you're like... You see the... When you're living in the journey and doing it, you're so busy doing it and so focused on where you want to get to, that you kind of like park things where they are, or where they have been, because you're on a new path. So seeing it all back, you remember the process, you remember the tiredness, you remember the joy, you remember the hurt, you remember the laughter, you remember the people. So yeah, that's what it's done.
Well, let's take you to a little happy place, because you always say you had a happy childhood. So what was Judy the child like then?
Oh, my gosh. I mean, you see the one where I had my hands on the hip? It was cheeky, it was funny. I was always, like, mimicking my mum. You know, she was a very big character. It was good food, good vibes. We didn't have much at all, but you knew that you had love, you had, you know, for us, God, you had faith, and you had family, and you had good food, and that's what it was all about.
And you were known as Boopsie?
Boopsie! Oh, my God!
And where were you born, actually?
I was born in Hackney. I was born in a hospital that was called Mother's Hospital. I think it's been knocked down now in Hackney. Look at my parents, oh, my God. So,
So what was your house like? What sort of house
who was
did
in
you
it?
live in? Yeah.
So, you know, we moved a few times, you know. The house that I grew up in was like is it a masonette? We've got one upstairs and one downstairs. We had this lovely neighbour, and that was in Leighton, so I grew up in Walthamstow. And that was the place I remembered the most. It was me, my mum and my sister, Sharon. And, yeah, it was a hard time because it was a small house and there was 3 of us. But my mum, that's the house there, she made it our little palace. She did everything she could do. You know, that house is where I had so much love, but I had some of the biggest traumas of, you know, being a child carer. And, you know, that's where I moved out to, and then my mum moved out from there into semi-independent. So much in that place. Sometimes I drive past and I look and I think to myself, oh, my God, that's the place, you know.
Was your lovely mum strict?
Pardon me?
Was it a strict house?
Yeah, my mum was strict. She was very strict, but she was, she had this big laugh, a lot of character. She was, you know, the mum of the family. When anything happened, if it was the wedding, the funeral, the christening, everyone was going to Auntie Lilette's house. And I used to love that. I used to love when we had that spontaneous time around Easter when all the cousins would come through. And I was, you know, the youngest. I had cousins that were 30 years older than me because my mum had me at, like, 47 and my dad was 51. Nice. So I'd be there, and typical West Indian, you know, you're not supposed to be in the room, but you'd be in the room and someone would be feeding you a little bit of food and you're kind of listening to what all the big people is talking about and trying to stay up late. And it was so joyous. It was really, really joyous, you know.
I mean, you were saying there, though, about becoming a child carer. When did that happen? Yeah,
when I was 9, my mum had an aneurysm, and unfortunately I was there when it happened. And, you know, my mum was doing what she does so well, which was cooking at the time. She was making cakes for a summer fete that I had at school. And she just was like, you know, she doesn't feel well. I just remember her calling me, and then she started to pray, and I knew something was wrong. And without crying, I knew something was wrong. And it's so weird. I was running out of the house. My mum was like, we had these pair of Wellington boots. She bought me these pair of Wellington boots. But, you know, money was tight, and she was like, I can't wear them until the end of that kind of like summer term. She bought it to put it down. You know, you buy things a year. Yeah. And I so wanted to wear these little red welly boots. In that moment of not knowing my mum could pass away, I saw these Wellington boots. I never forget, I put them on. That's how cheeky I was. I put them on, but I ran outside and I went to a lady at the top of the road who my mum used to look after her daughter, and not the neighbour, and they came in. And obviously they saw that my mum was in a bad way, and they kept me in the front room. And then my dad turned up, and I was like, yeah, something is really, really... And my dad looked...
Because your dad wasn't living with you at that time?
No, he wasn't. And he looked so nervous. You know, because my mum was such a strong woman, very powerful, you know, her presence and what she'd done, how she was bringing us up. So when I saw my dad look nervous and emotional, I was like, something is really, really serious. No one ever explained. And then my sister turned up, and then I don't think I saw my mum for a little while. And I remember having a conversation with my sister and a friend at the time, and saying to her, you know, is what mum has, is it something that it won't get better and we won't see mum again? I just remember them crying. I was thinking, OK, this is serious. And I probably saw my mum maybe about 4 weeks or so after that, because she was an aneurysm, is a blood vessel that bursts in your brain, and she was in intensive care. She had to be resuscitated, and, you know, she had to be rehabilitated. And the kind of woman my mum was, when she came home months later, I mean, she was supposed to stay at home and, you know, build her strength and so on.
Take rest. Yeah.
So I had, that was the first time I kind of knew about social services. My sister took on everything. She was only 18. A house, a mortgage, a 9-year-old child. And so they gave us someone to take me to school, meanwhile my sister was still at college. And this lady would take me to school, and on the way home, we'd see my mum on the wall. She'd been all day, where she tried her best, her strength to walk halfway and walk back. That's how she was determined to get herself back.
How long did she live after that?
If I was 9, I'd say another like 25 or so years.
Yeah. Oh, right, OK.
My mum had 5 strokes.
And how did that... So obviously you were dealing with that, which is a lot at the age of 9, but in terms of in school, did comedy come out of that trauma? And, you know, was that your sort of salvation, if you like?
I think so. I think when I think about my family, we've got such, you know, big personalities. My cousin Judi, he had a big personality. My cousin Rosie, who always made me amazing cakes. We all had this, you know, West Indian
comedy
culture,
bones.
Comedy bones. But I do remember being in the midst of them and mocking my mum and doing things, and everyone always laughing. And I thought to myself, I'd love to do something like be on TV, but just didn't think that it was something like a child.
But it protects you through school being like that as well, doesn't it?
You know, and I was a chubby girl, you know, and you know, for me, that came from trauma. So when I was at school, being popular was making everyone laugh and facial expressions and just being about that vibe. And that got me through, to be honest with you. And I think definitely comedy was a way of me, like, navigating through emotions that I was feeling, navigating through things that I didn't know how to interpret or maybe who to speak to about it, and feeling like I'd lost some parts of having a parent, a mum in that sense.
As we'll talk a lot, of course, about your comedy years, you know, but looking after your mum, as you've described, and you talk about social care quite a lot, is that why you got into a career of social care?
I think so. My sister's, you know, my sister's a senior social worker. I've got a cousin who was a nurse, and I think for me, culturally, caring in the sense of looking after someone, an elderly person, it's just a norm from back home to here. And I think that, you know, there is a lot of female role models in my life that are in that sector, so it just felt natural for me to gravitate. When I was doing any kind of work, if it wasn't the drama and arts, then it was the care work. These were 2 things that I was always kind of good at. So, you know,
you went back and studied, didn't you? I mean, you got your degree.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't leave with... Oh, God, the kids are going to see this, aren't they? OK, I left with a few GCSEs. That was me for my masters, actually. I left with a few GCSEs and when I was a child at school, I was dyslexic and I didn't know. So that was another thing where the jokes would hide, that I didn't know how to spell that or exactly what that meant. And being the class clown. And then, you know, I went back after I had my daughter. I thought to myself, let me go back and do my GCSEs again. So I did that. And then I went and did an access course. Then I did this little 6 weeks course as university to top up your credits. And then I went back and did a degree, my first degree. I've started one degree, which was like youth and community. I didn't finish it. So I went back and did community arts and social science. And then after that, I was like, OK, I'm dyslexic. I'm a single black mum, because my ethnicity will always come into stereotypes and statistics, and I live in social housing. Am I going to have all those labels on me? What can I do to kind of like evoke those labels and not make myself feel like that's all I am? So for me, it was go and get your masters. Like, see if you can do it. Plus, I'm dyslexic. So that's what I did. I went and did my masters, and I had support from friends and family.
It's been tough going, though, with it.
Yeah, because
your mum wasn't in the best of health.
No.
You're studying.
When I did my first degree, the last year, I think, or the second year, I got pregnant and my mum died. So, you know, and I split up with my children's dad at the time, all like in the same week. And then I took the year out and went back to uni and finished. And then I took like 2 years out, and then I went and did my masters on my own with the kids. And
you ended up in child protection, didn't you? And
well, yeah, I did.
Area.
I worked in youth offending, which is in any of those areas you're going to have child protection and children in need. And you know, I worked in a very tough borough, a borough that had a high rate of youth offending. So I saw things that was very traumatic. You know, I had cases that was very difficult, amazing team that I worked with, but also it gave me an insight to what youths are facing, and it made me really think about my own youth. Not only was I working in that borough, but I lived in that borough with the highest statistics of youth violence, and that made me, I have to try and do something, not saying that anybody else who is still there was not trying, because there's so much different circumstances that stop you from moving forward. But I just started to think, what can I do? You know, I was in social housing, I had black mould, it was affecting my son's health, there was so much. But I just had to keep pushing through.
Bet you learned a lot then.
Yeah.
Now, just thinking, you were talking about Shiloh as a baby.
Yeah.
Your mum passed away just a few weeks before Shiloh was born, is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I was about 5 weeks. It's so weird because I've got a video of the funeral, and then I've got the video of me giving birth. And one thing I never forget, I've got the same nails. So I was like, oh my God, this is the weeks. It makes me realise, you know, from doing a refill to getting my nails done again, you can do it for like 3-4 weeks. So that always sticks in my mind. But yeah, my mum started to pass away when I was pregnant. She just became like, she stopped talking. She had a dementia, she stopped talking. I think that was one of the hardest things. And, you know, when she was like finally passing, I know this sounds crazy, but she passed in a beautiful way. You know, we was all around her. Her best friend was there rubbing her, you know, this is my godmother, Auntie Vi, rubbing her chest, you know, go rest now, sweetheart, rest. You know, we was rubbing her hand, we was playing the tambourine, singing her favourite gospel tunes. And then I was doing an imitation of my Auntie Blossom, with these 2 big dogs, and I was doing that. And we call it travelling. So my mum was at a stage where she's travelling, so her eyes are closed, but she's taking quite deep breaths, so that's what usually happens. Your hearing is the last thing to go. So I was doing that, and I was, you know, big belly pregnant, as we call, and she laughed. And everyone was like, oh, my God. And I was like, no, she can't. And I did it again, and she laughed, and I was like, oh, like, what else could be the greatest thing that as your mum is travelling, I made her laugh. And I think that's what made me think, you know what, if I can do that, then I can try and do comedy.
Oh, really? So that was a
that
significant
definitely was the
moment.
push. Yeah, that was the push. And I had a conversation with my mum that after that same night, you know, I had a conversation with her saying, you know, Mum, look, I'm pregnant, I'm finishing uni, but, you know, I'm okay. Like, if you're tired and you're ready to go. And then she passed 2 hours later. So I think that gave me that, made me feel contented, made me feel like I had that significant conversation with her for her to say, look, you've seen all what I've gone through. Go and live your best life.
And what was your very first comedy programme or experience?
My very first was my friend got married and she wanted me to MC, be like the MC, like, and I was like, oh my God, and she's like, no, you'll be great. And I did that and, you know, I did more than welcome Mr. and Mrs. You know, I just seen people laughing and mouths open. I was like, okay, maybe this, maybe this could work. So it was that. And then, you know, I was a lot on the black circuit. Unfortunately, there is a divide between the urban circuit and the mainstream. And let me tell you something, the black circuit, the comedy circuit, you've got people like Mr. C, Quincy, you know, all those people, Slim, Ginny Ashray, these people, John Simmet, when they put you on the stage, you're on a stage with 500 people when you're talking about cultural references and, you know, making them laugh hard. It was really healing for me because it was such a hard time after Mum passed and having the baby. I was in depression, but getting on that stage and making people laugh and releasing something that I probably didn't know how to express in any other way helped me get through, helped me feel empowered, helped me have conversations, helped me build my confidence.
And you did sort of social work and comedy sort of arm in arm for a while, didn't you? Because it was like, how do I earn a living from this? But then if I remember, there was a turning point with a particular video, which I think we've got.
Who the hell invented and designed Elephant and Castle's roundabout? I was going round and round, ring a roses, pocket full of posies. I tish you, me damn Ross lost. That's the kind of roundabout that you bring your Bible with you. You bring your Bible, your Quran, you bring something with you, like a holy water, because you just want to get to the...
And that caught somebody's eye here.
Yeah, Sally and Tom. I mean, you know what? I just started to do videos because there was things that I had seen or observed and thought, oh my gosh, I'm the only person that saw this. Like, I think my first video was about old school garage and stuff, and I did that and I put it up, and that was just on my own friend's page. And they were like, oh, that was really funny, you should do another one. And I started from there, and I kept to do videos, and they were just like getting thousands of like views, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I did that one about the roundabout, and yeah, got a phone call. My agent said, oh, they want to meet you. I was like,
well, you
really?
mentioned Sally and Tom. Of course, that's the bosses at Loose Women. They saw it and
called me.
Got in touch.
I remember walking through like the office and just thinking, did they mean to call me? Is this like, is this really happening? So when I walked in, I saw Sally and Tom, and they were having a conversation with me, you know, and talking about what they've seen, and they actually like really looked into who I was. I was like, this is unreal. And then you leave, you know, it's like until you leave and you think, oh, you're not going to hear anything. And then it was like, literally, a few days later, do you want to come on as a guest? I was like... Do
you remember the first appearance? We've got a clip of it.
Oh,
my! See it? Here we go. Hold on to those nails because Stacey's going to rip them off.
I know. They're absolutely gorgeous, isn't they? I've done
they are good.
Coming on with you fabulous ladies. Fabulous.
So, Meghan Markle, why do you feel that she'll never be accepted?
I mean, you know, look at all the controversy that's happened.
So how did that feel that day? It seemed a natural
to us. That was surreal, you know, watching the show, and it's something that I've always thought, God, I'd love to be on there. I admire all the women that's there, all, you know, your backgrounds, all your different things, whether you're from a journalist to a singer to an actress. You know, Trisha Goddard, someone that I'd seen as representation, having her own chat show. So sitting in there at that time, I was so nervous. But just, I felt so supported, and I had that bit of a taste, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Left quite happy and excited, and then getting that phone call to come on as a panelist, I think, if I'm honest with you, after putting the phone, I was just hysterically crying. It was just, I could not believe it.
I just wanted to ask you one last question. When you were young and you went through all that trauma, did you have a thing in your head about what happiness look like, and are you there now?
Do you know what? I always had this feeling, like visions that I had in my mind of this feeling of being contented and driving and having the wind and having just this feeling of contentment. And it happened the other day. And I was just like, oh, my gosh, you get frightened to accept it because you don't want to say you're happy and then you lose the gratitude. But I had this feeling of contentment.
And why was that the other day? Why in particular?
Just because of where life is, being in this place, you know, having my education behind me, this workplace, you know, buying a home, meeting all these amazing women, and it just felt content.
We love you.
Oh, well. And listen, Judi, you have brought so much to us. You really have. It's been a joy, a joy.